So after the news broke that Dream's latest speedrun had been declared late, I decided to look into it and read the report. And while the video seemed to be pretty confident and showed pretty concrete evidence that Dream had faked his run, you look into the report and you read it carefully and you realize there are some flaws that show that the study, while it may not have been biased, is definitely very wrong and misleading in certain aspects. Now, before we get into this video, please note, 1, I have not done an extremely high amount of research on this. I've basically watched the video, read the report, done some basic statistics research, and read a few tweets going back just to get a more context for the situation. The other thing is, I am not a professional statistician. I'm someone with relatively good stats knowledge. I don't have any degrees. I don't have any intense experience doing stats project. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But let's get right into it. So the report actually looks really good, really professional. They got all their data properly, that's lined up. It seems like they were really trying to be legit. The equation at the beginning of section 10.1 is a little bit misleading because that are the odds that it happens once. And that's the main problem I have in the video. They only concern the fact that this would happen once. Dream did 11 streams and the data we have is based off of 6 of them. Now they did try to remedy this in section 10.2.1. Now this isn't in the video, but it's extremely important because this is their best number, the first equation 10.2.1, except for the formula that they used to acquire it is completely wrong based on my knowledge because they never actually factor in the fact that they have 6 streams. They only use the number of 11 streams and they go completely based off that. And to my statistical knowledge, that is not the equation they should be using. I believe they should be using this one. Here you have in 1 and in 2, which shows the old sample size and the new sample size. Now, if you factor into this equation, you get approximately 1 in 10 million, which is much lower. And even this isn't a perfect number. None of these numbers is the best number we could possibly have. Theoretically, the best number we have would be all the runs we have access to and all the runs we don't have access to. Essentially, all the data that was ever taken. Even that which was not on stream and only Dream and maybe his friends have seen. We don't have access to all of that. What we do have access to is 11 streams. Now, the study didn't use all data from 11 streams. Why didn't they? Now, there's a few reasons, 3 reasons in my mind why they might not have wanted to do this. 1, they didn't want to take the time. From what I can tell, the 6 streams were already, data was regularly available, not too hard to find, and getting the data for the other 5 streams would have been a hard task, would have taken a while, and they just didn't have the time. The second reason is they might believe that Dream turned his hacks off for that time. But that doesn't make any sense because why, if he was turning his hacks on and off, would he only do it in between streams? If you can do it like that, you can do it between, in the middle of streams, and it would make it a lot hard to catch on. I find it almost impossible to believe that he would think about turning it on and off in between streams, but never actually try to do it through the streams, as that would be a much better way to hide it. The third reason is that this study is just biased, and I don't think this is the case, because if it was, there'd be a lot easier ways to bias the study than simply not going and getting out extra data. So I'm pretty sure the reason they don't have extra data is just because they didn't want to take the time to find it, which is fine. I didn't take the time to find it for my video. Now, there's one other thing I'd like to talk about, and that is the sampling bias that they mentioned in their own video. It's called stopping bias, which is the idea that Dream stops when he gets a good run, and therefore you see a higher percentages of good or lucky runs. Now, they access this in the video, but in the report they actually don't talk about this at all. They only talk about the stopping selective data of them when they're choosing their data points. Now, why is this important? So this is important if Dream plays off stream worse than he plays on stream. Now, why would he play worse off stream. It's because of the fact that when he gets a good run, he stops. It reminds me of a How Ridiculous video where they shot the world record basketball shot from 180 meters. One of the two. Any case, they shot it, and they got it on their third attempt. Now, this does not mean that they can shoot 1 out of every 3 basketballs, but we would think that because once they shot the third one, they stopped. Now, we know because they did 160 and a 200 one later when the record got broken, that they can't do this consistently. It took them like 5 days on one of them. So this is the same idea when it's transferred over to Dream. And the idea is Dream has good luck. He gets one really good run, and then he goes back to doing it off camera because you want to end the stream on a personal best or a really good run. Now, how do we know he's not doing the same thing off the camera? And the reason we know that is because he's not submitting a bunch of best runs that no one sees. When he submits a best run, we see it. And since we see it, it would be included in the data that we would have. So we know that when he's off stream, he's performing worse than when he's on stream. And that you really can't account for. But given that the number... So I'm actually going to cut that recording short because it's nothing compared to what I found later. Now I'm going to keep that messed up equation in, even though there's actually a reason that equation is messed up, and it was actually my mistake. I missed stuff in the survey, but I'm going to keep it in because 10.2.2 explains everything, and I think it's good background information to have. So 10.2.2 states that they apply the stopping rule correlation to the blazes, but they do not account for the fact that they have 6 out of 11 streams going. Why did they do that? Because they say that the blazes were only looked at because the pearls were so crazy. They established the pearl data first, noticed how crazy it was, and then looked into blazes as well. That makes sense, except for they said that they didn't have to account for the fact there was only 6 out of 11 surveys of that. And that is not how that works. It explains the equation in 10.2.1. In 10.2.1, they weren't actually trying to account for the fact that they only had the data 6 out of 11 streams. They were simply trying to account for the fact that their data was most likely picked by someone who was trying to frame Dream. Not necessarily frame him, or just trying to show data that was bad for Dream. Now, they did not compile their own data. But they mentioned in 10.2.2 that potential selection across RNG types by a malicious investigator is still a problem. So their data is wrong, and they knew it, or they were pretty sure that their data was intentionally selected to be evidence against Dream, and they didn't get new data. Not only that, but their equations, even if they did have proper data, which they don't, are still completely wrong because they never actually account for the fact that they're only running 6 out of 11 streams. So, and not only that, there's non-stream data out there as well, and they don't account for that. So their numbers are way, way, way too low. Just way too low to make any sense in the mathematical context, and their data was rigged. Those way too low numbers are based off of rigged data designed to frame him. So at this point, whether or not they were trying to bias a survey to frame Dream or whatever, it doesn't matter because this survey has lost 100% of its credibility. Even if their data wasn't malicious, it's still wrong. So, no, I can't say for certain that Dream didn't cheat. There's still a decent amount of evidence that he did, but it's not in this. This is just wrong. And I was going to end my conclusion by saying how incredibly airtight this is. But no, most of their math is wrong. 10.1 is actually right, but it's misleading. 10.2.1 is all wrong, and 10.2.2 is where they basically admit that their data is completely biased and then just continue to do the math regardless. So, yeah, Dream has a right to be mad because even if he did cheat, this survey is messed up. This study just does not seem to understand what it's doing or the concept that their data shouldn't have been chosen from a guy who was trying to get Dream taken off the leaderboards. So, yeah, this survey, the video is incredibly misleading, even misleading the data that they had in the survey, which is also completely wrong. So yeah, mathematically speaking, this survey is wrong. You don't even need to prove that there was bias going on inside the study or inside the people running this investigation, because the math in the investigation and the data that the investigation used are both just proven wrong. So, or biased. Both proven, the math is proven wrong, the data is proven biased. So, this is over. Put him back on the leaderboards, please. That being said, don't be mean to anyone who's on the other side of this opinion on you. There are smart people on both sides. So just don't be a jerk, okay? Take what I say with a little bit of salt. I won't say a grain of salt, because they do basically state that their data is probably gotten with malicious intent. But just don't be mean to anyone. Yeah. Basically, don't be mean to anyone is a good strategy to have. But I'd say it's pretty clear that, not that Dream didn't cheat, but I'd say it's clear that we do not have enough evidence that he did.